Hello and welcome to the Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel. I'm Lisa. Thanks for stopping by for the hashtag Whimsy Stamps Patriotic Hop. During today's video, I'll be using the magic mushrooms to create a dramatic background. You'll be seeing some amazing projects featuring our star of the hop, the military die set. You'll want to leave a comment and subscribe to each channel participating in the hop for a chance to win a $100 gift certificate to the Whimsy Stamps shop. Now, in this hop, you can find all the participating videos by clicking that blue hashtag in the title. Just click that and it'll populate a list of all the participating videos in this hop. Then you can just hop to each video, watch it, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button for a chance to win that $100 gift certificate. Now, if you're new to the Whimsy Stamps channel, welcome. We hope you'll hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in touch so you'll know when new content is posted. To our loyal subscribers, welcome back. So here's the star of the show, the military die set. And in this set, you're going to get a silhouette of 3 soldiers in formation, a star, USA, and 3 dog tags. I'm going to be using the silhouette of the soldiers in formation on my card. We're going to pair it with the Military Heroes stamp set. I'll be using the flag from this stamp set along with one of the sentiments on our card. So this background that I'm getting ready to share with you is one that I have done. I did it about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but I thought, you know what? It's a great background for a military themed card. So let's go ahead and share it here on the Whimsy channel because, you know, maybe a lot of people haven't seen this yet and I feel like it's worth seeing. So we're going to start with the Sun Rays stencil from Whimsy. And you see I have it laid on a piece of 6x6 paper. We're not using any pixie spray or anything like that with the stencil. You can tape it down to your cardstock or you can just use your magnets for your glass mat if you have that. But I do recommend that you temporarily secure it down. So either with the magnets or the tape will work great. I'm coming in with my yellow magic mushroom. Now, I do want you to know about 30 minutes before I started recording, I went ahead and I spritzed these magic mushrooms with water so that they would be ready to be used. Now, this set of magic mushrooms that I'm using is dedicated to dye inks only. So I have 2 sets. One that is just for the dye inks, and then one that I use strictly for distress oxides. The dye ink mushrooms are misted each time I use them. You have to make sure after you're done using them that you let them dry before you put them away. So what we're doing here is I've loaded some dandelion ink. This is Memento dye ink. We went ahead and we pounced that yellow ink down through the Sunray stencil onto avalanche white cardstock. Now this is 80-pound cardstock I'm using. You could use 100-pound, even 110-pound if you wanted to. What I found is with the 80-pound, and you're going to see this a little later in the video, I'm going to come in with some scrap pieces of paper and add to the back of my ink blended panel here just to, you know, give it a little bit of heft to it, I guess you could say, sturdy it up some. So what we're doing now is we're taking the It's Cloudy stencil and we're loading up our blue magic mushroom with the Memento Summer Sky ink. Look, if you don't have Memento inks, don't worry. You just want to grab a yellow dye ink, a light blue dye ink, a dark blue dye ink, black dye ink, and then we're also going to be using a white pigment ink. So whatever brand you have, that's what you're going to use. So I'm using, like I said, Summer Sky from Memento, and we're going to start to kind of flick this ink out across the stencil. Now I'm concentrating on the center of my panel here, and you do see me work in a circular motion. The one thing I want to point out is make sure you have your cardstock taped down while you're doing this, because a couple of times my cardstock shifted. It wasn't enough to make a difference, but it'll just be a lot easier if you go ahead and you tape that panel down to your work surface. So I'm just going to keep on going back and forth with my It's Cloudy stencil. And remember, I'm focusing on the center of this panel. I want to keep it as light as I can in the very center of the panel, because we're going to come back in and we're really going to darken up those edges here shortly. So though the edges aren't going to make much difference by the time we get through darkening those up to create this dramatic background. So focus on the center of the panel with that summer sky or light blue ink that you're using. You're going to go all the way down the panel, and I just like to take my stencil and rotate it. You can flip it upside down. If you do, make sure you clean it off. You can also go ahead and mask off the center of the stencil, because I know for me sometimes I get a little bit crazy while I'm stenciling and I don't pay attention to what's going on, and then I end up stenciling something I shouldn't have. So if you need to mask that center off, and you're going to see me do that shortly, if you need to mask that center off, I recommend that you go ahead and do that before you start laying your ink down. So now that we have our center done, we're going to go ahead and come in with some darker ink. So we're going to start with Memento Nautical Blue ink and go ahead and start laying these colors down. So this next step it's pretty easy. You're going to line your stencil up with the design that you'd already stenciled. And then we're going to come in with a darker blue ink, and we're going to start on the edge of our cardstock and blend in towards the center. Now remember, we want to leave as much of the center as light as we possibly can. So you're only going in just a little bit each time you blend off of that edge towards the center. I'm lining my stencil up again with the design I'd already stenciled. And I'm going to go ahead at this point and mask off the center of my stencil. Now, two reasons I did this is one, my brain said, Lisa, you're getting ready to stencil these clouds here and you know you don't want to. And also my brain said, you know, if you had that masking paper down, Lisa, you wouldn't have to hold this stencil. The masking paper could hold it in place for you, and it would make it a little bit easier on yourself. So that's why I went ahead and masked off the center of the stencil. But again, you can see I lined my stencil up, and I'm going to go ahead and continue to ink just the edges, leaving the center as light as I possibly can. Once you get to the bottom of your panel, you're going to set your stencil to the side, and then you'll just go in directly to the bottom with your magic mushroom or blender brush and ink across the bottom. Now, once I start to ink this up, you're going to see that there's some tape laid down there, and that's okay. I had my panel secured so it wouldn't shift on me. But what I'm going to do is go ahead, pull this up, and we're going to take it to the paper trimmer, and we're going to go ahead and trim it down to the size that we want it to be. So I'm going for 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 with this panel. So now that we have our panel cut to size, we're going to go ahead and bring in the dramatic part of this background. I'm picking up that nautical blue ink with my magic mushroom, and I'm going to start along the edge and just ink the very edge of this panel up. We're going to blend it out a little bit towards the center so that it's a nice blend, but you don't want to go too far, because remember, our goal is to keep the center as light as we possibly can. You're going to hear me say that a lot, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize for it now, but I just want to be sure that when we're doing this, we will always be mindful that center needs to be the light. While I'm inking this up, I do want to let you know that not only did I use nautical blue for this part, I also bring in Paris Dusk. I love this color. I think it adds such a beautiful layer to this that I always use it when I create this background. So I am going to go ahead and come in with the Paris Dusk next, and then comes the really scary part. We're going to add tuxedo black ink around the edges of this panel. Don't be scared. I promise the dramatic effect that it gives is worth it. So let's go ahead and move in to that tuxedo black ink. So a couple of tips while you're using the tuxedo black ink along the edge of your panel. You want to lay down just a thin line of this. You don't want to go too far in. So keep it to about 1/4 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 inch in your panel. Don't worry, we're going to come back over this and we're going to blend again with the blue. Use a clean paper towel or a clean rag to hold your cardstock in place, because if you don't, you could possibly end up getting smudges on your panel. And I did get smudges on my panel, but I'm not going to panic about it, because I'm just going to let it decide the placement of my die cut pieces that I'm going to be using on this card. And we're going to keep going. I'm not going to sweat it. So here you can see I laid down that black ink, and man, it really does bring this panel to life. I love what it does for this. So we're coming back in with our dark blue ink, and we're going to blend that over the black and start to blend it in towards the center just a little bit. Whenever I'm wanting to hit only the edge of my panel, I try to hold whatever blending tool I'm using at an angle. If it's a blender brush, I hold it at an angle and let the bristles barely hit the edge of that paper. With the sponge, it's the same thing. I hold that sponge off to the side at an angle. You'll see it here. It's not flat down. I'm working it from the edge, and I'm only letting part of the sponge hit the edge of my paper. And then we'll just come on in and blend it out softly, which is what I'm doing here. You always want to make sure that you're blending it out, giving it that soft, beautiful blend towards the center. So once you have this part done, of course, I'm going to come in with both the Paris Dusk and the Nautical Blue. But if you don't do 2 shades of navy blue, don't worry about it. Just use your one and make sure you're creating that beautiful soft blend in towards the center. Now, once we're done with this step, we're going to work with some white pigment ink. I'm going to be using Hero Art's Unicorn ink, but whatever white pigment ink you have will most certainly do the job. So let's go ahead and start to lay down some white pigment ink. So we're going to grab our sun rays stencil and we're going to lay it back down over the panel. You don't have to worry about lining it up with the yellow sun rays you did at the beginning. You just want to, offset it some from those yellow rays. Now, when you look at the sky and you see these rays coming through the clouds, you don't see yellow rays. You see white, almost translucent, like milky looking rays, right? That's what I see. And the reason that we did the yellow rays is because we're trying to create the illusion of this is sun coming through the clouds, right? Streaming down through the clouds, creating these beautiful rays. So that's why we use the yellow ink. But we want to knock that yellow ink back just a little bit so that it's not quite so yellow. So what we're going to do is I'm picking up some white pigment ink with my magic mushroom, and I'm going to pounce it down over this stencil. Try to focus mainly on the center of the panel, because that's really where the rays are predominant, right? We'll pounce these down. I'm going to secure my stencil down so it doesn't shift on me while I'm working with it. But I'm just going to pounce these down into the center of the panel, and then we'll shift it and repeat the process again. And then we'll bring in the cloud stencil and add some clouds over this. The final step will be when we bring our black and blue inks back in and do our final blend around the edges. So it's a process. This is not something that is going to happen in 5 minutes. This is a long process to create this background, but it is so worth it. Now, you saw there that some of the rays were blended out to the edges. That's not a problem, because remember, we're going to come back in with the black ink and the blue ink, and we're going to clean up those edges one final time. But I do want you to remember, this is not a quick process. This is a process that takes about 20 to 30 minutes to do. But if you let yourself get lost in it and just enjoy the process, you will get so much joy out of it once it's finished. And you can use this background for so many different things. You can do different variations on it. You could keep it lighter around the edges if you wanted to, and keep that like I had it at the very beginning, where that sun looked like it was just so bright at the top. And there you can see all that beautiful white rays just beaming through. The last thing I want to say about the panel is you need to allow yourself lots of dry time for this. We did a lot of ink layering on here. So I would recommend that you make this the day before you actually want to put the card together, and allow it to dry overnight before you move into the next steps of this card. Now I'm going to quickly move you through the rest of this card making process because it's all pretty simple after that. We're going to die cut our formation of soldiers 3 or 4 times. It's up to you how thick you want your dimension to be, but I'm going 4 times. I'm using a heavyweight black cardstock for this. In fact, it's 110 pound, I do believe. So once I have these cut out, I'm going to use my Barely Art glue and go ahead, stack them together, set them to the side, and we're going to let them dry while we move into stamping and heat embossing our flag and our sentiment onto that ink blended background. I have the background placed in the MISTI, and I've laid down lots of anti-static powder. Don't be scared of anti-static powder. It is your friend when it comes to heat embossing. So we've laid down the anti-static powder and we're stamping the stripes to the flag from the Military Heroes stamp set. We're going to stamp this 3 times using Versamark ink, and it's just a sticky ink that's going to grab a hold of the embossing powder and hold it in place so that we can get it heat set on our card. I'm laying down the corner of the flag where the stars are so I can get it stamped before I lay down my gold embossing powder. I want to make sure that I have this exactly where I want it. I'm going to go ahead, stamp it 3 times, just like I did with the stripes. Now, because this is a sticky ink, you have a little bit of play time there. You don't have to feel so rushed, but you don't want to take too long with it because the ink will dry and then you'll have to stamp it again. So we'll take this out, we'll go ahead, put our embossing powder on it, and then we'll heat set it. Now, I'm going to give you some tips about heat setting that hopefully will help you achieve better results when you're doing this. I like to leave my stuff laying flat down on a silicone mat when I'm heat setting. One of the things that I want to mention real quick before we get into all of that is when I pour this powder on my background, I'm trying to only get it in the area where I stamp. And you want to get in the habit of doing that because it's less cleanup. And the less you have to clean up, the better off you're going to be. So I take a stiff, bristled, angled brush and I just wipe away any excess before I go in with my heat gun. So if you take the time to clean up any excess stray specks of powder, you will have a beautiful heat embossed image. And this is the process I take every time that I'm heat embossing. I make sure I take the time to clean up any excess powder because I don't care what anti-static embossing tool you use, you will have excess powder left behind, and you do want to take the time to clean any of those stray specks off of your panel, or you're going to be frustrated after doing all of that beautiful ink blending, and then you're going to be mad and you're going to be like, Lisa, why didn't you tell me to clean it up? So take your time with this part because, like I said, you don't want to mess up your background. And then we'll come in with a preheated heat gun. Now make sure that heat gun is hot. You want it to be hot so that when you go in and that heat hits the powder, it starts melting immediately. If it's not melting immediately, take that heat gun away and let it heat up a little bit more. Notice how I'm steady with that heat gun. I'm not shaking it back and forth. I can't say this enough. Shaking your heat gun back and forth does not stop it from burning your paper. Okay? If you take the gun in and it's hot, and you chase the powder as it's melting with the heat and then pull it away, you're going to have this beautiful heat embossed image. And no shaking back and forth. Please don't shake back and forth because what happens when you shake back and forth? You're throwing the air back and forth across that powder. And what is that doing? It's scattering that powder across your cardstock. So if you do shake your heat gun back and forth, please stop doing that and just hold it steady, chase the powder, let it melt it, and then pull it away and be done with it. So I've at the point now where I'm ready to start putting this card together and wrap up this video. So I flipped that ink blended panel over. We're adding some Barely Art glue to the back of it, and I have a couple of pieces of white scrap cardstock sitting here that I'm going to put to the back of this just to make it a little bit sturdier than what it is. Once I have that down, I'm going to put some magnets on the top of it. You can use acrylic blocks if you want. And I'm going to let that glue dry, and then we'll take it to the paper trimmer to trim away the excess. Now hang on to your scraps, because this is a great way to use up scrap paper, is by using it to the back of ink blended panels to make them a little bit more sturdy. Now once we have that done, we'll come in with mounting foam to the back of this after it's dried, and we'll put it on a piece of red glitter cardstock. If you don't have red glitter cardstock, not to worry, just use red cardstock. If you don't have red cardstock, take a piece of white cardstock and color around the edge of it with your red alcohol marker or red pen, whatever you have. There's always a way to make it work. So once I have this layered onto the red glitter cardstock, then I'll go ahead and put it on my 5x5 white card base. I use 110-pound avalanche white. It's the same as the Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. The only difference is the Neenah Classic Crest Avalanche White has a brighter value to it than the Solar White does. So once we have that done, that's pretty much going to wrap us up, except for adding our stacked layered soldiers onto our card. And that's going to bring us to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the whole process. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Don't forget, hashtag driven hop. Just click that blue hashtag Whimsy Stamps Patriotic in the title of the video, and that will populate that list of participating videos so that you can quickly and easily hop along with us, leaving a comment and subscribing at each stop, so that you'll be qualified for a chance to win that $100 gift certificate that is sponsored solely by Whimsy Stamps. I need to let you know that. We really do appreciate you joining us. We hope you're enjoying the inspiration. Don't forget, you can follow us on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. I have my affiliate links linked down below for you in case you want to check out any of the products that I've used during the video. And if you happen to shop through them, I will earn a small commission for that. And for that, I will be forever grateful. So until next time, please know how much I appreciate you for spending time with me. And you know it. Take care.